Okay, are we live?
Good.
Welcome to Creature Guy Live Daily News. For those of you that don't know, my name is Ethan. Today we're going over a new species of ornithopod that's been discovered, as well as a new species of marine reptile. And we are both streaming on Kick, Rumble, and YouTube. So, from Sci News, new plant eating dinosaur species uncovered in Nevada. Paleontologists from the Nevada Science Center, Idaho State University, and Montana State University have described a new genus and species of Thessalosaurid dinosaur from the fossilized remains found in southern Nevada, United States. Nevada in general is not a place in, especially the US, where you find many dinosaurs at all. In different geological layers, you might find certain marine organisms, but this is referring to much further back into the Phanerozoic era, before the time of the dinosaurs. Technically, the Phanerozoic era spans from about 530 million years ago until, well, the present day. So I'm referring to different small aquatic organisms from the Devonian, the Silurian, and Ordovician and Cambrian periods. Not so much when it comes to the Mesozoic era or the time of the dinosaurs, especially during the Triassic, Jurassic, or Cretaceous periods. It does occur, but it's usually of fragmentary remains. But a full intact, or I'm guessing this is what they found, specimen of even a small dinosaur is rare, but good to hear. So this definitely seems to be a newer drawing. Many earlier Thessalosauриan descriptions, or I'd say reconstructions, tend to not score feathers, and that is because, like many species of ornithopods, they did not, or there's not any evidence for these animals having feathers, but it is certainly possible, especially with the smaller species.
Nobody signed it.
Yeah, it's strange. Wait a second. Yeah, we don't know who this was from. The newly described dinosaur species lived in what is now the United States between 190 and 94 million years ago. Interesting. So, this is during the early late Cretaceous period. So, around the same time that large dinosaurs over in Argentina or Chile or southern South America, such as Giganotosaurus and Argentinosaurus, existed. The ancient creature was approximately 1.8 meters or 5.9 feet in length and 60 centimeters or 2 feet tall. This seems to be about an average size for the Thessalosaurid dinosaurs. They were a very small group, at least when it came to overall size. Technically, there haven't been many species, but I'd say over 12 different species of Thessalosaurid have been discovered. Named Nevada-Didromius schmidti, it ran on its two legs and had a beak at the front of its head or mouth. This is quite typical for different species of Thessalosaurid dinosaurs. They are strictly bipedal. So far, there doesn't really seem to be any evidence for certain species being quadrupedal, so walking on all fours. And also, for the most part, seems to be, despite certain species having an almost carnivorous sort of accumulation of teeth in their mouth, they seem to be mostly herbivorous. In fact, we can look up probably one of the most famous species of Thessalosauриans, the Orodromus. So Orodromeus. So this is also a bit of a later species, much later species of Thessalosaurid. This animal existed somewhere around 68 to 70 million years ago during the late Cretaceous over in North America. I
I know
believe
you don't like these, but
parts of Montana. The problem with this individual, it almost seems like somebody took a primitive or an earlier species of Pachycephalosaurid, because this is an AI picture, and mixed it with an iguanodontid and an early species of ceratopsian. So it just wouldn't work. Thessalosauриans don't have those horn-like structures. The skull, especially the top area, like the center of the skull structure, as well as towards like the front of the neck, almost look pachycephalosaur like, and even the beak to an extent. Oh, what gives a pachycephalosaur an early ceratopsian look is its forearms. Even the accumulation of the fingers look like that. And the feet look almost like a certain species of large carcharodontosaurid or even a tyrannosaur.
Why does this guy look like a lizard?
That is definitely a much older depiction of a Thessalosaurin. And if this is Orodromius, this could be like 1960s. Certain 1970s depictions would still look like this, but they had evolved when it came to reconstruction. Definitely an interesting depiction when it came to laying their eggs. Let's see. Okay, this is definitely a much more recent model. So 2013, I mean, not bad. This definitely has a more Thessalosaurin look. I'd say the arms are much better when it comes to the overall musculature, even though the elbow is a bit pointy. But I mean, besides that, I mean, somebody's model. It's not exactly a drawing. Um, the fingers, I guess they're okay. The ones on that AI picture seemed far too pudgy.
This looks like it came out of a book.
It's too wide. Oh yeah, this looks like from maybe a 1980s or 1970s book. Let's see. Wait, that's not a Thessalosaurin though. This is some species of Dromaeosaur. Maybe it's supposed to be relating to a certain troodontid. It does have a very long, somewhat long and thin jaw. Because I'm trying to think of a certain species of Dromaeosaur that would have coexisted with different species of Thesalosaurines like Oreodromius. There is a troodontid called the um, Stenonychosaurus, but this is far too robust for a troodontid. And the toe claws or the sickle claws are far too large as well. It almost has like a Deinonychus look to it. I have no idea who this is. The arms are fairly long, and they're also facing towards the ground where they should be facing towards each other.
Okay, is this guy any
And there
better?
aren't any feathers either. This is not a bad look for an Oreodromius, and they're adding the feathers too. I mean, that's fine. But the overall accumulation, at least when it comes to the structure of the legs, the arms, it looks much better. The even the tail structure, it's very straight and somewhat thin, which is a very Thessalosaurin trait. And this can be seen in other species of small ornithopods as well. It's like even back into the Jurassic period, so over 145 million years ago. And you had animals such as Ornithosaurus, Dryosaurus, Heterodontosaurus, and they would have a somewhat similar sort of a body structure. Though in some cases, these animals would have had slightly longer teeth compared to Orodromius, even scoring certain like dinosaur canines, which is very rare. I think there was that one other species, Pegomastex. Oh, yes, this was an herbivore, so likely not feeding on any species of reptiles or amphibians. Okay, we can head back.
Oh, I thought you wanted me to pull something else.
At least not at the moment. The animal had features of both Thessalosaurin and Orodromini dinosaur subfamilies, or like features of both. Oh, Orodromini. Okay, I forget that. Probably it's referring to Orodromius is a part of this subfamily of Thesalosaurines. In recent times, there have been different subfamilies that have been discovered of different lineages of dinosaurs. Whereas previously, it was just like there were many just large main groups for different species. But a lot more subfamilies have been discovered recently. But the paleontologists think it more likely to be a Thessalosaurin dinosaur. Um, yeah, this animal, if the depiction is right, does not really look like something similar to an Orodromius. So that sounds correct. Also, I think Thesalosaurians had slightly longer arms compared to their body size compared to members of the Orodromini lineage. Due to the very fragmentary nature of the specimen, and of course, gosh, Nevada. Phylogenetic analysis yields statistically insignificant results, said Dr. Joshua Bond, director of the Nevada Science Center, and his colleagues. Um, I wonder where specifically though. Nevertheless, a few taxonomically important characters, particularly those of the femur, support the hypothesis that this is a Thessalosauline and a new genus and species. This would represent the earliest occurrence of Thesalosaurines in the fossil record of North America, as all other Thesalosaurines from the continent date to the Maastrichtian age of the late Cretaceous epoch. Yeah, I think when I was referring to the other species, like such as Heterodontosaurus, Dryosaurus, those are all earlier ornithopods, not necessarily thessalsaurines, and had very distinct morphology and physiology. The partial fossilized remains of Nevada Dromius schmidti were discovered from the layers of the Willow Tank Formation at Valley of Fire in southern Nevada. I would say that during this time in the beginning of the late Cretaceous, there aren't a lot of dinosaurs that are being discovered. I mean, there are certain species, but they're just not very common. There just simply aren't many geological layers that score dinosaurs from this point. So that's why they just simply don't occur. And they're going to be more common in different areas of the world, such as different parts of South America, Africa, and Asia at this point. And even some cases, Australia. Bones identified. Yeah. Bones identified include the proximal femora, a series of vertebrae missing neural arches, several pedal phalanges, fragments of ossified tendons, and some as yet unidentified elements. The geographic position of the Willow Tank Formation Depot Center. Willow Tank Formation. Sounds like something you would find in Kylosaur at, but yeah, definitely not. Very proximal to the severe highlands of the time, likely experienced some biogeographic insularity from other areas represented by contemporaneous units of Western North America. Moose, Mustushit, member of the Cedar Mountain Formation of Utah, the Wyan Formation of Idaho, and the Black Leaf Formation of Montana. Okay, so these are fossil formations I'm definitely more familiar with, especially the Cedar Mountain Formation, which is where in older layers we find animals such as Decododon, Utah Raptor, who else? Not Gastonia, and I believe certain sauropod dinosaurs from the area as well, and that dates to somewhere around 135 million years ago. But this is during a much later point in the Cretaceous after all these other dinosaurs had gone extinct. But unfortunately, this is probably one of the only species of dinosaurs, and it's fragmentary in its remains from this area. So let's head over to the next article. Okay, so paleontologists identify oldest known Mega-Predatory Pliosaur. Loranosaurus kyleni lived in the Middle Jurassic Seas approximately 170 million years ago.
Hmm.
So, yeah, the pliosaurs, they reigned for somewhere around 80 million years. So, first evolving around 160 to 165 million years ago, and then eventually going extinct at about 90 to 93 million years ago during the early late Cretaceous period. And they did evolve much earlier before predators such as the mosasaurs would appear later into the Cretaceous period, but they wouldn't really start showing up in the fossil record until somewhere around 90 million years ago. So they had a relatively short reign. The mosasaurs only existed for somewhere around 33 million years. So let's see. But 170 million years ago. I mean, that's very old for a species of pliosaur. So pliosaurs were a type of short-necked plesiosaur, marine reptiles built for speed compared to their long-necked cousins. It would depend on the species of pliosaur. There were some very large species that were not necessarily slow in the ocean, but they couldn't reach speeds of 30 miles per hour or um, over 48 kilometers. I'm guessing at this point, the pliosaurs were probably not much more than 1,000 to 1,500 pounds or somewhere between 5 to 700 kilograms. Also known as pliosauroids, these creatures were not dinosaurs but distant cousins of modern turtles. These were much more closely related to the turtles than they were the dinosaurs. They were very far off in the family tree. Um, the sauroptegoids were a group of marine reptiles that would branch off into different species of marine turtles and long-necked plesiosaurs, as well as the pliosaurs, and even the nothosaurs back in the Triassic. So if you're referring to the nothosaurs, they went extinct at the the very end of the Jurassic, about 202 million years ago. Yet they evolved somewhere around 240 million years ago. So let's see. Pliosaurs had four large flippers, large heads, extremely powerful jaws, and enormous teeth. Certain species did not have very robust jaws. Even if you're referring to animals like Liopleurodon, the smaller species especially, they were quite thin and narrow jawed. Still capable of taking on something like a person, but not anything like an armored turtle. And hunted fish, cephalopod mollusks, and other marine reptiles. They were definitely capable, for the most part, when it came to a variety of pliosaur species, of taking on different species of ammonites, which are relatives of squid. They lived between 220 million years ago and 70 million years ago. That's a very long time difference. See, even the plesiosaurs hadn't really evolved by the Triassic period. 70 million years ago, like the pliosaurs had already been extinct for over 20 million years. Plesiosaurs, you still had a wide variety of different species and were mostly found in the prehistoric seas that covered modern day Europe. You would still find different species of pliosaurs in other areas, but many species are found off of marine deposits in Europe. But there are certain ones that occur in certain parts of Africa and Asia. Famous examples such as Pliosaurus and Kronosaurus, some of the world's largest pliosaurs, were absolutely enormous, with body lengths exceeding 10 meters or 33 feet. No, we've found certain species of pliosaurs and Kronosaurs specifically because it's just mentioning the genre that could reach well over 45 feet in length. They're pushing 13 to 14 meters and probably weigh somewhere around 15 to 20 tons. Said Dr. Benjamin Keir, a paleontologist with the Museum of Evolution at Uppsala University.
No, I think you said that.
What?
The last part.
Well, yeah, when correcting it. They were ecological equivalents of today's killer whales. Okay, here's the problem with saying that. Killer whales are pack hunters. There's no evidence for pliosaurs, mosasaurs. It certainly is possible, but for those animals being pack hunters, there also really wasn't anything else besides themselves that would have been larger in the ocean. Most of the animals that they fed on were their size or smaller, mainly because in many cases they were the largest marine creatures, except for certain parts of the Jurassic. I don't know of any extremely large fish from the Cretaceous, but like the Ledosichthyes, that could reach somewhere between 60 to 85 feet in length. They're pushing well over 25 meters and probably weighing over somewhere between 30 to 45 tons that they might have fed on.
That's dwarfing.
Yeah, well, that was one of the few times that the fish or the prey in the ocean in general were larger. But I think it's so far it just seems to be that they were probably just solitary hunters. So I wouldn't compare them with an orca unless you're talking size. Then yeah, that would make sense considering orcas can reach somewhere around 9 tons, probably weigh about or reach a length 30 to 35 feet, pushing 9 to 11 meters, and would have eaten a range of prey, including squid like cephalopods, large fish, and other marine reptiles. They have all been found as preserved gut contents. Um, No, there are certain instances. In fact, there's been a wide variety of instances with different species of long-necked plesiosaurs, such as the late Jurassic Chimerasaurus from England, with preserved not only bite marks but literal teeth embedded inside of the vertebrae. And not just gut contents from pliosaurs. In fact, gut contents are not often talked about when it comes to the pliosaurs in general. That tends to be more of an ichthyosaur thing. And ichthyosaurs are a group of marine reptiles in which the specimens that we have found, they usually contain different pups inside the rib cage of the females, but not really even a lot of evidence for showing what they were feeding on. So this is good to see. I mean, what we found, at least part of the bottom jaw, that's always good to see. And yeah, even the top of the very front of the snout. I guess a little portion of the upper jaw.
I always find it interesting when they name something and they have no head and then they just create a head for it.
Probably completely different physiology or morphology from any other species of pliosaur. And a sliver of a cervical vertebrae or the neck vertebrae. Little bit of the forelimb and what's that? The gastrolith. It's not hitting me with that specific bottom bone is to the rib cage. This is also something that we see in different species of theropod dinosaurs, but not herbivorous dinosaurs, which is interesting considering the pliosaurs are very distantly related. And seems to be more of a carnivore trait, not an herbivore trait. A partial skeleton of Loranosaurus kaleni was excavated in 1983 in the Marnes de Grevelotte of Lorraine in northeastern France. Whoa, okay, well, that was a little way back, and it's over in France. This isn't too surprising. There's a wide variety of different marine deposits over in the Jurassic layers of France, Belgium, Germany, and even certain parts of Switzerland. The find was made by paleontology enthusiasts from the Association Mineralogique et Paléontologique de Hayange. That sounded Asian. Um, de Hayange. Sure. It des environs. AMPHE. The fossils were later donated to the Musée National de Histoire Naturelle de Luxembourg. Oh, okay, here we are. Yeah, you guys have a lot in common with France, despite you speaking German. And identified as a species of the Calvian Pliosaurids, Simulestes kaleni. Simulestes. That specific French pliosaur is not hitting me. I guess he likes baguettes with his ichthyosaur lunches. In the new research, Dr. Kier and colleagues analyzed the fossils and identified them as a new pliosaur genus Loranosaurus. This giant reptile probably reached over 6 meters from snout to tail. Okay, for one of the earliest species of pliosaurs, this is a decent size. This is 20 feet and lived during the early middle Jurassic epoch, around 170 million years ago. The animal had jaws over 1.3 meters long. That's around 4.3 feet, with large conical teeth and a bulky torpedo shaped body propelled by four flipper like limbs. Torpedo shaped is a description that's been used for pliosaurs. I'd say long necked plesiosaurs a bit more for quite some period of time. Probably at least into the 1980s, but definitely in the 1990s. It would depend on the species, especially when it comes to pliosaurs. I think it's that it was also guessed for a long period that these animals could just quickly maneuver in the oceans. And due to a lot of further analyses on the uh, locomotive abilities of these animals, it doesn't seem to be with certain species, especially when it comes to the plesiosaurs. They did have a somewhat limited locomotion. Possibly the ichthyosaurs in general, so the dolphin-like marine reptiles, might have been a bit more mobile in the water. Okay, hmm. So Lorinosaurus kalini was one of the first truly huge pliosaurs, said Dr. Sven Sachs, a paleontologist at the Naturkunde Museum Bielefeld. Gave rise to a dynasty of marine reptile megapredators that ruled the oceans for around 80 million years. Yeah, that's about right. So, what was that? Here, let's look up a specific species of animal. Okay, so Megacephalosaurus. So Megacephalous. Let me redo it. So, despite this animal sounding like a species of Pachycephalosaur, it is not one. It is another species of pliosaur, but it lived at the very end of the pliosaur's reign. This animal existed over in the early late Cretaceous seas around 93 million years ago. So this was during the last couple million years of the carnivore's reign.
AI gives it a neck.
It's not only that, I think it's has a bit to um it's lacking in overall muscle tissue when it comes to the head. These nostrils are also far too small and far back in the animal. Also, it's like the carbon dioxide or the exhaust from this animal, the exhalation. Um, yeah, they did not emit carbon monoxide. They were releasing carbon dioxide. I'm guessing some people do question that, but it's making out like there are two holes, and there should be two large ones, but a bit further towards the front of the snout. Another thing is that the teeth are, for certain pliosaurs, a bit too straight, and they're also very uneven when it comes to the overall size. The neck is too thin, at least from this angle, in my opinion. It almost looks like a certain species of Dolichorhynchops plesiosaur,
This looks like it's
which is
descaling the fish.
yeah, they would just well either swallow it whole or rip off large chunks. Um, yeah, also this pliosaur is weird. What was I saying about that? Oh, Dolichorhynchops long-necked pliosaur. Some might confuse them with being pliosaurs, but they're not. This is the interesting thing when it comes to the certain species of pliosaurs. The Megacephalosaurus has a very distinct skull morphology. Whereas it's very different from late Jurassic species such as Predator X or even Liopleurodon itself. There are other different species of pliosaurs as well. These aren't the only ones to exist. But Megacephalosaurus, it's almost like somebody took an ancient species of large penguin from the Cenozoic era, at least in my mind, and stuck teeth on it and obviously enlarged it. This animal could reach somewhere around 35 to 39 feet in length. They're pushing somewhere between 11 to 12 meters and probably weighs somewhere around 8 to 10 tons.
Does
So,
look like a penguin. It reminds me of the Madagascar thing.
um, I wouldn't say any of them. I was just thinking of earlier,
I was just looking at its eyes and then its mouth. And
yeah, Pleistocene or Ice Age or Pliocene epoch penguins, or even the later species, well, late Cretaceous species of seabirds and really marine birds like the Hesperornids and their distinct long, thin, narrow toothed beaks. So this animal was likely just feeding on different species of ammonites, maybe fish. I mean, it's possible it might have hunted smaller, long-necked plesiosaurs, but this doesn't seem like the animal with a robust enough jaw structure to go after those marine reptiles. But I mean, the same thing could be said with different species of spinosaurs, and they have long and thin and narrow snouts, but there is evidence for them hunting different species of iguanodontids and possibly even at least medium-sized species, smaller species, I'd say, of long-necked sauropods. I'm not going to include, I mean, there is evidence for them hunting pterosaurs as well, but pterosaurs would have been just a calorie supplement or a bit of a snack. Also, the fins apparently seem to be smaller compared to its body size when it comes to Megacephalosaurus compared to different species of pliosaurs.
I like this one.
Yeah, it seems to be an older picture. I don't mind it, but there's something off about the teeth, though, when it comes to the skull of Megacephalosaurus. They do appear to be quite even in overall dentition. It's not like animals such as Liopleurodon, where there's a bit of distinction. Even Predator X. Also, this animal seems to have a very thick, short tail, which the other pliosaurs, it tends to narrow down as it reaches the end of its overall body, whereas with Megacephalosaurus, for some reason, stays quite wide. It is a big mystery as to why the pliosaurs ended up going extinct towards the first 10 million years of the Cretaceous, but it's not the only major extinction that was occurring. There were different branches of dinosaurs that had gone extinct at that point in the Cretaceous too, as well as certain other marine reptiles such as the ichthyosaurs. So the even though the ichthyosaurs evolved much earlier into the Triassic period before the pliosaurs evolved, yet the beginning of the late Cretaceous was the end of their reign, mysteriously. Our identification of Loranosaurus kaleni was one of the earliest mega-predatory pliosaurs, demonstrates that these creatures emerged immediately after a landmark reconstructing or restructuring of marine predator ecosystems across their early to middle Jurassic boundaries, some 175 to 171 million years ago. Said Dr. Daniel Madzia, a paleontologist at the Institute of Paleobiology of the Polish Academy of Sciences. This event profoundly affected many marine reptile groups and brought mega-predatory pliosaurs to dominance over fish-like ichthyosaurs, ancient marine crocodile relatives, and other large-bodied predatory plesiosaurs. Well, this was also, yeah, one of the, or you could say possibly the heyday for different species of marine crocodiles like the Metriorhynchids. In fact, we can bring one up. The Metriorhynchus itself. So Metro. Yeah, Rhynchus. Okay, Metro Ryncus. What?
Well, either I'm spelling everything wrong, which knowing me, it's possible.
You know what? I have another species we can pull up.
I got it.
Oh. So there were a wide variety of different members of the Metriorhynchid lineage of sea crocodiles. Now, these weren't technically true species of crocodiles. These were distant relatives. They were members of the Crocodilomorph family. I think certain people will confuse them with just another group of marine reptiles and descendants of the sauropteroid lineage of reptiles. But these are actually marine archosaurs. The marine archosaurs were not a very large branch of the Archosauromorph family in general. So they are more closely related to the dinosaurs, modern day birds, crocodilians, than they are to most marine reptiles. So the different species of long-necked plesiosaurs, the pliosaurs, that they're coexisting with the ichthyosaurs are very far off in the family tree, as well as like the Triassic nothosaurs and mesosaurs. The Metriorhynchids were a very interesting group, or they are a very fascinating group of marine reptiles. Now, just remembering they're in the Archosaur lineage. They did exist during much of the Jurassic as well as into the early Cretaceous period, going extinct right before the late Cretaceous would occur, so somewhere around 102 million years ago. And it's a big mystery as to why. But these animals, it seems, were pretty much fully aquatic inside of the different oceans that they inhabited, especially around different areas of Europe as well as different parts of Africa. Um, the largest of these different species could reach well over 35 feet in length or pushing 11 meters and probably weighed 3 to 3.5 tons. Petrorhynchus was a much smaller species of crocodilomorph, but still probably reaching maybe about 13 to 15 feet in length or pushing 4 to a little under 5 meters and probably weighed somewhere around 15 to 1,800 pounds or between like 700 to 800 kilograms. But likely just feeding on different species of ammonites as well as fish and maybe even occasional seaborne or coastal pterosaurs, but they were fairly small at this point. Metriorhynchus existed somewhere around 160 to 165 million years ago during the Jurassic period. So close to the same time as different species of marine reptiles such as Liopleurodon and Ophthalmosaurus, as well as even Ichthyosaurus. And yes, it does seem that these animals were cold-blooded and didn't really have the ability to come onto land. They had evolved full um, flippers and didn't barely scored any sort of toe claws. I mean, they had toe bones, but they just weren't equipped for walking or supporting its weight. It is very possible, looking at this model here, that they were feeding on coelacanths here and there, considering coelacanths have been around since the Devonian period over 375 million years ago. But likely a wide variety of other species of fish. I think this is a pretty good looking model. Metriorhynchus is definitely one of the more lightly built species of marine crocodilomorphs, especially the Metriorhynchids. So let's see, is there anything else? Lorenosaurus kelleni is thus a critical addition to our knowledge of ancient marine reptiles from a time in the age of dinosaurs that has as yet been incompletely understood. Yeah, there's still, when it comes to the pliosaurs in general, I'd say definitely many empty gaps during the Jurassic period as well as late Jurassic, as well as the early Cretaceous period. It is quite interesting that we have a number of specimens from the end of their reign, despite them rarely being talked about. Usually tends to be around the late Jurassic period. So, thanks for joining. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guide Live Daily News. We are streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. And remember that nothing is better than all animals,